Welcome to the Solo Mo Show, a weekly podcast hosted by Cory O'Brien, the social media strategist at Heat and author of thefutureofads.com.
And I'm Adam Helway, CEO of the digital marketing agency Secret Sushi Creative.
Each episode, we discuss the intersection of social, local, and mobile. Our goal is to help you understand these topics so you can integrate them into your marketing and advertising. Today is May 8th, 2012, and this is episode number 18. In this episode, we'll be discussing just-in-time mobile phone research, unlocking content through social media actions, displaying like counts on clothing in retail stores, the Avengers augmented reality app, Nike's free face campaign, Uber's on-demand mariachi fiestas, and more. How's it going, Adam?
It's going good. It's almost summer. At least it feels that way out here.
Feels very summery. It is warm and toasty. It makes it hard to stay in the office.
And I always default to it seems the last couple of shows defaulting to the weather, but that's like the nicest thing, happening out here lately. We went from all this rain, and now it's nice. So we can go out, do a little hiking. And like you said, I think when you work in the office a lot, it's always nice to have nice enough weather to appreciate the outside.
There you go. It's actually, I've been doing my best to get out of the office and work from coffee shops and parks, and the new iPad, especially with the LTE, just enables you to kind of take your work wherever you go. So hopefully our listeners are doing the same and able to take advantage of the weather where they're at.
So what do we got in store? You did a little early rundown there at the beginning.
Sure. So speaking of the iPad, we have a Pew Research study that actually looked at just-in-time information as it relates to people's mobile phone usage. And so they had done a study just looking at how people are using their phone, both smartphone and just regular feature phones, and how often they're using it to get just-in-time information. So just to share a few of the stats that they came up with real quick, the highest percentage is actually 41% of cell phone owners have coordinated a meeting or get-together in the past 30 days. And a couple other ones that really I thought were interesting is 35% have used their phone to solve an unexpected problem that they or someone else encountered. 30% used their phone in the past 30 days to decide whether to visit a business such as a restaurant. 27% used their phone to find information that helped settle an argument. 23% used their phone to look up the score of a sporting event. And 20% used their phone to get up-to-the-minute traffic or public transportation information. And I think of all those, the 30% that have used their phone to decide whether to visit a business such as a restaurant is probably the most applicable to the listeners. This is basically saying that when you're out and you're walking around and you're saying to yourself, should I go to this restaurant, or how's this store compared to the store down the street? A lot of folks now, their first instinct is to take their phone out, and whether they fire up Yelp or maybe they fire up Foursquare, they're actually looking to applications to help them make that decision. And this, I think, has a lot of interesting implications for retail businesses that are really looking to drive foot traffic. What's your take on these numbers, Adam?
Well, I mean, they don't necessarily surprise me at all. They just, kind of confirm, I think, what some of us already probably even do, let alone understand that other folks are doing. They define it in the study as users' ability to access data immediately through apps, also web browsers, so things like search engines, of course, Google and such, and contacting their friends on social networks, so actually asking questions via their social networks in real time. And so those are all kind of interesting things to consider, is whether you are if you're a location-based business, are you present on something like Yelp or Foursquare, like you said, because you'll be present then when those searches happen, or maybe even when a friend of theirs checks in, and then that check-in is visible to them when they're looking on their mobile device. But even more so, or in the same vein, that folks reach out to their social networks, likely via something like Facebook or Twitter, and say, hey, does anybody know where X, Y, and Z? I'm around here, or what do you think of this particular shop? Or I would say they even drill down to items. Like when you're looking at something specifically in a store, they're likely also asking about a particular product right in that store. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think a couple of the takeaways from this is Number one, definitely go to some of those leading networks. So you mentioned Foursquare, you mentioned Yelp. I think, even things like Google Places, considering how prevalent Google searches are with the mobile phone, and just making sure that your information there is correct. I know a lot of times I'll look up a local store and get really frustrated when it doesn't have things like the hours that they're open or a phone number to reach them at. So I would say that's, step number one is go out and find the places that people are likely to find you and make sure that your information is correct and make sure that as much information as you can put out there is available. And then step two would probably be to optimize the appearance of your website on a mobile phone. And so, especially with things like Yelp, if somebody's going to look you up on their phone, they're likely to also either, reach out to their friends or take the next step and look up something like Yelp. So maybe ease that process. Maybe include a link to your Yelp review page on your mobile optimized site, or highlight the information that people are likely to look for. And that, as I mentioned, includes store hours, it includes phone number, it oftentimes even includes an address. And if you can link that address to the cell phone mapping application, that's even better. It'll enable people to quickly navigate to where you are and figure out, how far away they are, whether it's walking distance or they need to grab a cab. So I think just taking a couple quick steps to verify that the information you're putting out there is both easy to access and accurate would go a long way towards driving additional foot traffic and in-store traffic.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the rules apply that are on the web. When you're on a desktop computer and you're looking for information, if it's hard to find, hard to navigate, you make it difficult, folks will move on to something else. And the same can be said for, like you said, a mobile version of their site, or whether your site makes it easier or not for those with mobile devices to actually, to access the content that they may be looking for. So paying attention to what they may end up looking for, which, like you said, could be likely an address or a phone number.
So speaking of making information easy to access, there were a couple of campaigns that came up this week that caught my eye because they felt very similar. So the first of which, and this is one that you came across, was MTV's Teen Wolf series. And they actually put out a call to action on Twitter, which said that if 5 million people watched the 2.5-minute trailer, they would unlock 10 minutes of content from the upcoming season. And the second campaign was from the video game Assassin's Creed, and they actually created an application on Facebook, and they had a number of different ways to unlock it. They were basically trying to generate social actions, and so if you tweeted about it using the hashtag, that counted as one kind of point, and then if you sent a message to a friend, that counted as another point, and you could actually recruit your friends to help unlock this thing. And when they got, I think it was 1.7 million actions or points, it unlocked the new gameplay trailer for their upcoming game. And so both of these were sort of bringing together the community and saying, hey, we've got this content, and if everybody does X action, we will unlock it for you and give you access to it. And it sort of feels a little scammy to me. It feels a little like you're forcing people to take unnatural actions to just view what's essentially marketing content. But, maybe it works for some of these brands. And maybe if you've got the clout that something like an MTV series or, a third installment of a hit video game, you can really get your audience to take an action for you. But, I go back and forth on this. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth as well. I think I'm leaning on the side, though, of rather than, a feeling of being forced per se. I mean, everybody's got the choice to do what they want to do, and I think, in watching that Teen Wolf trailer, I actually wish that if I tweeted it, I would unlock the 3 minutes that I wasted on watching the trailer, because it was terrible. But nonetheless, they said that if you've got an incentive to provide somebody, okay, so in this case, you're saying, well, if you liked it and you want to see more, especially, the first episode, 10 minutes of it, exclusive content, then share and tell your friends and get them all to go ahead and share that. And I think it's pretty, I don't know where their baseline was, but I thought it was pretty amazing that they were going for 5 million shares.
Oh, I know, right? That felt crazy. I was like, they must know that every video they put out gets 10 million plus, or else there's no way they'd hide this thing behind a 5 million view high barrier. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think teenagers, which I think the trailers seem to be aiming towards the kind of like Vampire Diary, what is it called, Twilight series type of crowd. That age group seems to kind of retweet first and then look at the content later. Like they don't really vet the content, I think, in the way that some other folks a little bit older up on the scale might do. So maybe it will reach that 5 million mark. But I think if you've got something of value to provide somebody, and value to me is different than value to you, right? I might not care. I might say, well, I don't care about that. I don't want to tweet this, but and a whole different demographic in your specific audience would likely jump on that and pounce on that just to get that first 10-minute peek into what's going on. I think we saw this happen in a different fashion with Pinterest, which we talked about a couple shows ago, right?
Which one are you referring to?
That was it wasn't an unlocking of a video per se or additional content, but Gilt Groupe had their deal on Pinterest where if you were to share this image, I think they were only asking for 50 shares, then you would end up getting some sort of discount coupon on a particular item, or maybe even on any item that they were having that day. I don't remember exactly what the deal was, but in comparison to just simply unlocking additional content, it was actually unlocking a discount on a sale, on something they were selling that day.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's interesting, because what strikes me as a little funky on the Teen Wolf and the Assassin's Creed one is you're basically making people watch marketing so that they can watch additional marketing. It's like this, you're opening a hole that they've got to crawl through to get to another hole to crawl through. It feels like a very strange thing, versus the Gilt Groupe offer on Pinterest that you talk about. You're in a way kind of paying people or rewarding them for their time in something that actually has monetary value. So you're saying, hey, if you share this and you demonstrate that you like this product by sharing it on Pinterest, we'll actually give you a discount on that product. We will save you money over what normal people have access to. So the value to that user is very clear. They understand that if they share this, they'll get a specific percentage off that actually has, financial value. And so the company is kind of paying their social media followers and saying, hey, here's how much we'll give you in exchange for doing some of the marketing on our behalf. Whereas the other two campaigns felt like, well, we're sort of relying on how big of a name we have and, how strong of a following we have, and we're not going to pay you. We're just going to, get additional value out of these interactions without then returning that value to the person in anything other than just more marketing content, which they're probably going to see anyways, because it's not like they're never going to debut these trailers. So, I
mean, it's giving it's access, right? It's the using social media to provide access to whether it be content. I mean, ultimately, it all comes down to usually a form of content in some shape or form. Whether it's backstage access and a peek into what particular musician or music act is doing, or maybe it's behind the scenes for a movie or something like that. I mean, what one man's trash is another man's treasure. And so when it comes to, compensation, whether that be, isn't a coupon essentially or a discount of something similar in that sense? I mean, it really is still kind of non-monetary compensation in a certain way. It's marketing at the end of that tunnel as well, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I think the difference, and it's subtle, but it is there, is that with a coupon, again, there's this exchange of actual financial value, and the person is doing something in exchange for getting dollar off or a percentage off of their purchase.
I was trying to remember that I'd seen some similar model like this before, and I remember now. And I'm sure it happens elsewhere in some places that I'm forgetting. But if you're a Mac fan, I'm a Mac fan, okay. And there's a lot of times where they'll be selling Mac software, so things like Mac Update and Mac Heist, and a lot of these. there's been kind of a movement of a few of them out there that what they'll do is they'll have, 4 or 5 applications highly discounted, and they give it to you at some low price. But of course, because software is something easily to distribute on the internet, most of those sales, actually all the sales, are done through a website. And therefore, they'll always put into there something like, after so many sales, and I've seen it also after so many, say, tweets as well, or if you just even do one tweet, we'll unlock this additional application for you. And this additional application is obviously, to sell. It's not just, I'm not talking iPhone application, I'm talking desktop software. But I've seen, probably for the last 4 years, that's been a model that a lot of folks have been doing with software to kind of unlock another application or 2 or 3 over time in order to try to kind of kick the momentum for that limited sale into high gear.
Yeah, and this, it even extends back further than that with the idea of group buying. And group buying has been around in certain verticals for a long time, and oftentimes even goes back and kind of predates the internet, where car clubs or something like that would get together and say, hey, we've got 20 people that want to buy this thing. Can you give us a better deal on it? So I think the idea of communities coming together and showing support for something in exchange for financial value is certainly a viable tactic, and it's something that a lot of companies could utilize. I would say the big takeaway from this is that unless you're a big name company like Assassin's Creed or like MTV, that you can't just get away with saying, hey, we've got this really great piece of marketing, and if you like us and do all these other things, we'll give you the privilege of seeing it. I think you've got to find a way of exchanging monetary value for those actions and really putting your money where your mouth is and saying, hey, we appreciate the fact that you're basically doing marketing on our behalf. And as a way of saying thanks, here's a percentage off, or here's a coupon, or here's a special price that nobody else has access to. And we're just giving this to you as a way of saying thanks.
And think about doing this. Do something initially that's attainable. So, for instance, for you, it might not be 5 million shares, may not be an attainable number to, for you may not, it doesn't matter. It may be, as long as people are sharing, if they never hit 5 million, you don't care, but make it attainable, make it something that people can finally feel kind of the sense of, okay, we reached it. We got the content. They're going to be more apt to want to do it next time. So when you take somebody like a Gilt Groupe, for instance, who has quite an audience and they're highly successful in their, in selling and what they do, they only asked for 50 shares on Pinterest.
Yeah.
And so I believe, and we talked about this last time, that was an initial experiment to see, well, how far could they get with something like this? But I think you need to make sure that whatever that kind of line that you want folks to cross before you, quote unquote, compensate them for their social actions, you want to make sure that it's something that's attainable and realistic for both you and your audience.
Definitely. Yeah, set the bar low and then progressively work it higher and higher as your audience has demonstrated that, hey, they're willing to take those actions, and maybe they're ahead of the goal that you had set, so set the bar a little higher next time.
Set the bar low with the amount of shares versus the trailer, because that trailer, man, was terrible.
Set the bar high in terms of quality of content.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my gosh.
All right. Well, I then recommend that none of our viewers go and click on the link that we share and watch that trailer, because according to Adam, it's terrible. So,
what's next?
So next, let's take a look at something that's getting a little more futuristic. And this was a story actually from a fashion retailer out of Brazil, which is always nice to see other countries experimenting with new social technologies and social behaviors. And I actually feel like I see this a lot, where you see these other cultures experimenting with something that maybe wouldn't fly in the United States, or maybe suits their culture a little better. So the company is called C&A, or it actually might be C&A Fashion. I'm not sure exactly how they phrase it, but C&A, it's a fashion company out of Brazil. And what they did is they actually created an intelligent clothes hanger that they could use inside of their retail store, and it was connected to the internet. And online, they allowed people to like individual items of clothing from this retailer's current line. And then in store, the clothes hanger would actually display the current number of likes that that piece of clothing had received. And it was sort of a way of displaying online popularity in the offline store environment. And I thought this was a really interesting way of sort of using online data and connecting the web into this offline world and, you know, informing people of, hey, this is the item of clothing that everybody else online seems to like. Maybe you should like it too. But I'm not sure if it goes too far in terms of saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to sell a bunch of these over here because that's what the community likes. And then if you're the person that goes in and is like, well, I don't really like that. I want this jacket over here, but it doesn't have a bunch of likes. Does that turn you off from that purchase? So I'm not sure where that balance is going to fall. And obviously for them, this was an experiment, but it'll be interesting to see how it actually influenced buying decisions. What was your take on this, Adam? Do you think that if you walked into a store and saw that your favorite item of clothing had been liked by 2 people and the thing next to it had been liked by 2,000, that you might be either likely to switch preferences or maybe just leave the store entirely out of frustration?
I don't think I would. I don't think I would switch preferences or leave the store. I think though that it might make me kind of like go. I mean, you walk into the store and you see something like this. It definitely catches your attention, right? Because you're so, well, what the heck is going on here? And if you see the photos and the listeners can check out the link, it definitely stands out. You got these big wooden clothes hangers with the numbers displayed there and the little Facebook thumb and all that stuff. I think it would make me look at another piece of clothing. I don't know if it would necessarily make me deviate from one that I'm already looking at and I like. I still would find it interesting if they were to do some sort of follow-up and see. I mean, this is kind of like a cool form of social proof where you've got all the stuff that's happening online where people are actually liking stuff that they really do, hopefully, you know, like, and that it's not being gamed or any of that kind of stuff. And then somebody goes into the store who may be the same person and may not be the same person. But that social proof of all these people saying that I really like this piece of clothing. I don't own it, maybe. I've seen it online, but I really like it. I'm one of X amount of people who like it. So I don't think for me, myself, it wouldn't necessarily convince me to buy something I didn't like. It might convince me to pay attention to something that I might have overseen because I might go, well, this is really cool. Let me check out the other likes and how much does that, you know, how many likes does that shirt have? So it adds a little bit of additional kind of social discovery right there in the store for me. How about you?
So the 2 thoughts that I have on this, and it's sort of, if we're getting a little futuristic as is, I'll take that a step further and say that, you know, getting even further into the conceptual or the experimental phase, I think the 2 things that I'd love to see this campaign experiment with would be taking the direction of information and feeding it the other way. So taking offline interaction and actually feeding that back into the online world. And whether that's the ability for people inside of the actual retail outlet to maybe record a video of their feeling towards a specific piece of clothing, and then that would get uploaded into the website. Or, you know, maybe it's a like competition, and when you go into the store, you can click a button, and that likes that article of clothing and shoots that back out to the online world, and you can compare and contrast what people in store like versus what people online like. I think there's a lot of interesting data that could be pulled there, and I'd love to see the in-store experience be as socially connected and as engaging. And I think the other thing that I'd like to see is it actually connects to the previous story of taking action in exchange for getting some sort of financial value out of it. So it would be really cool if they did something like 5,000 likes means that this item of clothing is now 10% off of its normal retail price. And being able to actually see that current tally on the article of clothing in the store. And maybe they, you know, it's some signage that explains, hey, any hanger that you see that has a 5,000 on it is automatically 10% off. And if it's got a 10,000 on it, it's 20% off. And you're basically recruiting the online world to create discounts for the offline shopping experience.
And in doing so, they're essentially spreading it socially through their networks, because when they like, it appears on their account, or it gets reshared on their stream and so on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, there's Pinterest integration and there's Tumblr integration. There's a whole bunch of things that you could do to really blow this out. So I think it's the start of something really interesting. And like I said, it'll be, I hope they do a follow up and report back on what people's experience was and whether or not it turned them off from the offline shopping experience.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, for instance, just technically how they did it. Because sometimes I'll be able to just see and kind of understand what they did. And it looks like they're on some interesting hangers there that might always, maybe they're always connected to the internet and they have a unique ID to them or something. Mm-hmm. I don't even know, because they look like they're fixed, to this rod and everything. So maybe they were always kind of wired there to the internet somehow or something. But I'd really be interested to know technically how they accomplished it, because that really sometimes can be the hard part about doing what you were talking about, kind of transcending from from digital to carbon based and back. How does someone do that without just simply having like a smartphone or a computer or a tablet there displaying the information, and so I think, again, it's that always be experimenting, and it's going to take a little bit more effort than just simply using the tools that are there. Might taking advantage of the APIs and having your IT team or tech development team jump in and try to work with you to find a really cool way to do something out of the box.
Definitely. So, Adam, did you get a chance to see the Avengers movie yet?
Yes, sir. It's one of the first movies I've gone to the theater to see for quite some time. How about you?
I did. I was actually there opening night, so Thursday at midnight. I rolled into the theater and think it finished up something around 2:30 in the morning. So I had a rough Friday following the premiere of that movie, but I thought it was pretty good.
Pretty good. Come on, man. That's understating. But I had gone thinking that I'm going to go to the very first showing on Sunday morning. I got there and basically the theater was already sold out for that showing. Then I went and bought tickets for the next showing, which wasn't going to happen for like another 45 minutes. Sat around in the lobby with my dad, just thinking that we had another 20 minutes to burn. Went into the theater afterwards and found that thing was actually packed.
Oh, no.
And then finally, in the end, bought tickets for another 45 minutes in the future, and then just ran into the theater and grabbed a seat. I was blown away by how busy the theaters were.
I bet.
But we're not here to talk about how good the movie was, although I'd love to do that. They advertised before the movie and even during the movie, they're doing a big push with a lot of different brands, as they usually do with movies like this, big blockbusters where they cross promote. They might do it at Burger King, and then they do it at like a store like Target where they'll have some merchandise and so on. And in this case, they're doing an Avengers augmented reality application that ties into some in-store stuff that they're doing over at Walmart. Did you see the preview of this as you were watching the initial trailer of this before the Avengers?
I didn't, and I'm not sure if I just wasn't paying attention to the previews and trailers, because I tend to kind of ignore those, though I think they skip some of the more commercially ones on opening night. They tend to just do trailers and then shoot right off into the movie, but
they're afraid you're going to pass out, huh?
Exactly. I was actually thinking that this would have been the perfect app for you to have while you were waiting for the eventual movie that you got in to see. You could have just spent time shooting things out of the sky using your mobile phone. That would have been an interesting movie connection for you to pass the time with. But I thought this was actually a interesting use of augmented reality. I tend to be somewhat bearish on augmented reality. I think that a lot of it is gimmicky, but considering the movie connection and considering the in-store promotion element of this, I actually thought it was a very smart use of augmented reality, and probably something that was, loved and highly adopted by their target audience. Does that seem to align with your take on it?
Yeah, it's exactly what I think. Most of augmented reality, I think, is a cool technology and hasn't been used in very cool ways. It's been very gimmicky. I think it's something that people don't all they can't necessarily all wrap their heads around it just yet. And I think in the future there'll be some really cool stuff that'll come out in that sense. But this is definitely the coolest approach to it. I think the coolest thing about it was, beyond using it to kind of play in the real world and so on, they added some elements that drove people into the store. And I think that what they were doing was they were using it to interact with in-store displays. And I don't know if it was regarding the movies or the toys or whatever it was, but they drove people in specifically to the stores to go interact with displays and be able to kind of extract content and characters and so on from things that were inside Walmart. And so that was a really clever way of getting folks to want to kind of go in and check out the items, the merchandise that they had available for the Avengers movie, because of course merchandising, movies like this is a really big deal. So I haven't downloaded the app yet myself. But I thought it was really, really interesting. I think with all the popularity of the movie, there's likely a huge fan base that would be interested in downloading an application like this. And, kind of geeks like us are also the kind of folks that would go running into a Walmart just to unlock some piece of content.
Yeah, and I think I both like that, and I think that was also potentially the one missed opportunity for this campaign. So love the fact that it drove people into a Walmart store. There were basically 6 characters, and when you download the app, you get access to one of those 6 characters, and the only way to unlock the other 5 is to go in and scan QR codes that are on these pop-up displays inside of Walmart. And while that's great for driving traffic to Walmart, it sort of cuts the experience short for people that either don't live near a Walmart or aren't ready that day to go out and run to a Walmart. So what I would have liked to have seen is more content available either through an alternative source or just other ways of accessing that same content. So maybe they would hide Avengers characters throughout their social media properties, and you would have to play a little bit of a hide and seek game to go find those, or they would release it over time at the end of, online videos or something like that, where you're still making people continue their engagement with the brand, but you're giving people other ways of getting access to that content. And maybe that's in the works. Maybe that's something where Walmart got an exclusive for a week or two, and then they're going to find other ways of distributing those QR codes. But I thought it was a little interesting that they only gave you one character out of 6 unless you had the opportunity to go into a Walmart store.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and maybe that's next for them, right? I think their desire was really, really to drive foot traffic. Mm-hmm. And so that was their focus in this sense. But I see what you're saying, that there's potentially more engagement to be had online in order to get the same effect.
Yep. Yeah. And, congrats on them for finding a very interesting way of using a mobile application to drive in-store foot traffic. I think that that's a challenge that not a lot of brands have solved successfully. So, they've definitely shown the way here for connecting that mobile experience to that offline experience. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. I just think that there's also, if you're going to have a very digitally focused product, it makes sense to give people digital ways of accessing that content in addition to the offline ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of speaking of interacting with brands online, do you check out that Nike free face campaign?
I did. I both checked it out and then looked through the gallery and laughed at a bunch of other folks that had interacted with it. But maybe you could explain how it worked in a short summary of it.
Yeah, so Nike, and this was from Nike Japan, so I'm not sure if the same shoes are available here, but they have this new shoe. It looks like maybe a running shoe that has a very flexible, the whole thing is real flexible, including the sole. And so what they've done is they've taken a series of photos of their shoe just kind of contorted in all these different ways, and they toss up a random photo of the shoe, and they're asking users to use their web camera to try to mimic the contorted look of that shoe in whatever shape and form it is with their faces. And so they're having competitions where people can vote on which face they think is best, and it looks like they're doing kind of rounds every week. There, after the votes have happened, they're giving away some prize or something like that. But it's a really awesome way to get everybody kind of involved, and get them also kind of talking and engaged with this this feature essentially of the shoe that they're trying to articulate to consumers.
And I think it also worked in the other direction as well, right? So if you had your webcam turned on, you could contort your face and the shoe would actually contort to match your face. So you would sort of make these weird faces, and then in response, the shoe would make weird faces back at you that tried its best to match the face that you were making at it. It was sort of a magic mirror if the image in the mirror was a shoe instead of your own face.
I actually was judging and on voting on the faces that I saw. I didn't even get that far, but that sounds like awesome stuff there. I'm the one that found this and shared it with you and didn't even get a chance to play with that fun part. But I'd like to see you playing around with that. It's kind of like when you first get an iPad or a long time ago with the on the Mac, there's the photo booth, right? And so you can turn that on, and suddenly you've got this what do you call it? Like funhouse mirror sort of effect going on, and you're sitting there, no matter who it is. The person could be just completely straight faced most of the day, but you put them in front of there, and then they suddenly start making these goofy faces into the screen as the funhouse mirror effect plays around and makes their head longer and shorter. And it sounds like this is the same sort of kind of effect here, where when you see the shoe moving about and everything, it kind of engages you and makes you want to play around and sit there and really engage with the brand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely a higher budget type of campaign, integrating with a webcam and creating this 3D model. That
a lot of technical stuff, huh?
A lot of technical stuff. And so I think, for a lot of brands, this is sort of a challenge to replicate. But there's also a lot of lessons that could be learned for any size brand. And one of that is, people like having fun. They like making funny faces and sharing those and viewing other people's funny faces. And, I think that the ability to rank others and see what other people's favorites were, that's really strong, a really strong part of this campaign. And kind of bringing your product to life and giving it a little bit of a personality, I think, is interesting here. So you think of a shoe just as something where a lot of companies focus on how springy is the sole and how, light is the weight, but you don't think of it in terms of how fun is the shoe, how much of a personality, or how does it match people's personality. And so I think finding ways of using social media and mobile technologies to actually bring your products to life is something that obviously has a lot of positive response from consumers, and brings people to life and gets them excited about the product that you're putting out there. So I think while the exact campaign might be difficult to replicate, there's a lot of macro lessons that could be learned from the success of this free face campaign that Nike put together.
Yeah, and as soon as we're done, I'm going to go over there and make faces at the shoe and see what happens.
Nice.
So did you do anything for, neither of us? I mean, with the last name O'Brien, you're obviously Mexican. So what did you do for Cinco de Mayo? Anything?
Yeah, we actually are members of a winery that's local to our area, and they put on a Cinco de Mayo party. So they had wine tasting, and they had some dancers doing kind of performances throughout the day, and so it was more of a mellow atmosphere. It wasn't the crazy Cinco de Mayo party. It started at noon, and everybody had kind of packed up shop by about 3 p.m. But still, it was a fun way to get in the spirit during Cinco de Mayo and have a little fun. Also, get out and enjoy the lovely weather. But we've discussed that already. But what about yourself? How did you celebrate Cinco de Mayo?
Like I do every single year, it's my mom's birthday, so we always fake her out and tell her that Mexicans happen to really enjoy, celebrating her birthday for some reason. So, so that's what we did. We went over and hung out with my mom and took her out for dinner. But it looks like a lot of folks potentially had the opportunity to have a fiesta on demand due to Uber, the kind of more technologically savvy version of a cab or limo company, right?
Yeah, Uber included an addition to their existing app, and this is a feature only available for a single day. but you could order up an on-demand mariachi fiesta through the Uber app. And basically what this was is if you lived in a couple of cities, I think they had San Francisco and they might have included Chicago on that list, though I'm not entirely certain. And you'd press a button and it would charge your Uber account. I think it was $100 for the experience, but what they would do is a van would actually show up, and out of that van would pour a band of mariachis, which would play you a song. They'd hand you a piñata filled with goodies, and then they'd hand you margarita mix because they can't actually deliver you alcohol with this thing. And it was basically a party in a box available at the push of a button for what I think was actually a pretty reasonable amount. I mean, $100 is, still $100, but considering the fact that you're getting what's basically a once in a lifetime experience of having a van full of mariachis pull up and deliver
a van full of a band,
a van full of band, exactly. Pull up and deliver a concert at your footsteps on Cinco de Mayo, complete with Cinco de Mayo libations. I think that's a really interesting concept and definitely something fun for Uber to do to incentivize people to check out their app and consider it for more than just the occasional taxi ride.
Yeah, and so people understand a little bit more. Uber essentially is, if you imagine the standard kind of, town car or cab or something that you would, call and have pick you up, especially for kind of like business or, going out to the airport and such. Uber has an application that allows you to kind of go far beyond just simply calling up somebody to come pick you up. You can, I believe, I've not yet done it, but I think you could choose your driver. I think you could rate the driver. It has some geolocation stuff on it and everything. And so rather than coming and picking somebody up, say, and driving them around, they kind of in a way did the they brought the party to you, and they did it really all in essence to take advantage of the opportunity of an event, right? Which in this case was Cinco de Mayo. With having an application, because Uber's service really relies on a mobile application, the first obstacle always is to make sure that is to get your application installed on whomever's mobile device. If you don't have it installed, then nobody could use it. And then if you don't encourage them to somehow persuade them to somehow install it on their device so that it's sitting there and it's taking up real estate and potentially gets used when it's time to use it, then you've got a big challenge ahead of you. And so I see this as an opportunity for them to to make people aware of their application and to get them to install it when maybe they're not yet ready to get somebody to come pick them up. But again, they really took advantage of a holiday, so to speak, that not everybody celebrates and not everybody thinks of as this wide mass holiday that you see millions and millions and millions of people celebrating, like something like a Valentine's Day or a Mother's Day or something like that. But they took advantage of it nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, in addition to taking advantage of specific holiday events and using that as an opportunity to promote your brand, it's also just a good example of sometimes the best way to get the word out is just have a little fun. And, it would have been easy for them to say, okay, well, maybe we have our drivers show up and they're wearing a sombrero or something kind of cheesy like that. But I think taking that extra step and saying, what can we do that would really be unique? One, it's going to leave a lasting impression on anybody that happened to click that button and spend the cash to have an on-demand mariachi band show up. But two, it's so unique and so exciting that you're pretty much guaranteeing everybody who does that is going to be talking about it for weeks to come. And, they're going to say, oh, well, I fired up the Uber app, and people are like, oh, well, what's that? And it opens up that door to get people discussing your product and discussing the benefits of the product. But really, it does a great job of just creating experiences and creating interactions with the brand that are definitely going to leave a lasting impression and definitely going to create conversations that I think does well to promote the app and just build word of mouth buzz. That's the elusive thing that, almost every company is after, but a lot of times we get lost in this world of trying to optimize things too much when really it's just, sometimes you need to have a little fun and things will kind of take care of itself from there.
Yeah, and one last thing to think about too in regards to the event, taking advantage of an event opportunity is take a look at your business or your brand. And I think sometimes people overlook because they don't take the time to, for instance, take a look at a calendar and find everything from the most standard holidays to the most obscure holidays, things that you might, Flag Day, for instance, you never know. You never know what could come from having that on a calendar and taking advantage of themes that happen to kind of fit and follow suit with all these different holidays that are out there. Again, both major and minor. And so I recommend, what was it? Just the 4th, right? Was May 4th. Mm-hmm. What was May 4th? That ends up being dubbed by the world at large, for whatever reason, the Star Wars Day.
Well, it's May the 4th be with you.
Exactly. May the 4th be with you. And so is there a way for your brand to take a look at an entire calendar from here to the rest of the year and map out opportunities of campaigns that you could wrap around those different, time-based, specific dates, those holidays, and take advantage of it similar to how Uber did?
Yeah. And you bring up Star Wars. There's also April 16th, which is 4/16. And Foursquare has actually adopted that as the official Foursquare Day. And that was something that their users had created, and then they sort of took advantage of. So, maybe in addition to looking for existing holidays, find a day or something each year that you could celebrate and try to create your own unofficial holiday and say, hey, this is the day that we're going to give back to the community and celebrate, and everybody's going to get together and we're going to have a lot of fun. And, I think that there's opportunities there, and there's other brands that have done that successfully. And so it's not out of the realm of possibilities that you could come up with something that really gets adopted by your community and they take ownership of it and make it something really great.
Cool. So are we actually about done?
I think so. Before we ruin it, let's make sure we close this one up, because this is going to be our first episode that I think we've successfully wrapped in under an hour. So. Nice. Well, as always, we do want to thank the audience, especially those that have stuck around for this shorter than usual episode. We're going to try to keep that trend going in the future and really keep our episodes as compact and filled with quality information as possible. So we appreciate those that have stuck with us through the earlier episodes as we're sort of learning and adapting and modifying the format, and hopefully it just continues to get better and better. So thank you to those people out there that are listening to the show and enjoying it and getting a lot of value out of it. And if we had to ask one thing of that audience, it would be that we love any rating you could provide us on iTunes. That helps to spread awareness of the show and just get additional readers, and great things happen for the show. So if we had one request to make, it would be that we'd love additional ratings of the show on iTunes. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, we would definitely love to hear from each and every one of you out there. And there's actually a number of ways to do that. We've tried to make it easy. So we are reachable on Twitter at SoloMoShow, and that's checked by both Adam and myself, or you can reach us directly. I'm available at Cory O'Brien.
And I'm at Secret Sushi.
We also have a page set up for the Solo Mo Show on both Facebook, Google+, and even a board on Pinterest. So if you're a member of any of those networks, just go ahead and search for Solo Mo Show and you should find us. And finally, if you're keeping it old school, you can reach us via email. It's solomoshow@gmail.com. And if you didn't have a pen to write all that down, you can actually get links to all of those various ways of getting in touch with us. It's available on our website, solomoshow.com, or in the show notes for each of the episodes. And show notes are available, again, either at solomoshow.com, or if you listen to the episode through a podcast player, either iTunes or maybe a mobile app on your cell phone, there should be an option to view show notes, and that also includes all of the links that we discussed today. So as we're talking about it, you can open up those links and follow along and experiment with some of the things that we've discussed for yourself to see what your own thoughts are on it. And hey, if you have a chance to play around with something and want to share your response to it with us, we'd love to hear that as well. So feel free to reach out for that, or any reason, and really just say hi. You know, we love any questions or suggested topics or feedback, or again, even if you just want to say hi and introduce yourself, feel free to do that. We would love to hear from you. And with that, we will officially call it a wrap on our first episode to stay within the hour barrier, and see everyone next week. Thanks.
Take care.